some places might give you entirely free housing. Some places might be like mine where you get like a 50% off for your housing rate. I find it to be beneficial because that's money that I get to keep for myself, that I can invest in my Roth IRA, that I can use for my own spending, that I can use for traveling, for leisure, because we know we get stressed as graduate students. So it's really important to like take breaks and have that extra money so that I can invest in my future and take those much needed breaks.
Welcome to the Personal Finance for PhDs podcast, a higher education in personal finance. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Roberts, a financial educator specializing in early career PhDs and founder of Personal Finance for PhDs. This podcast is for PhDs and PhDs-to-be who want to explore the hidden curriculum of finances to learn the best practices for money management, career advancement, and advocacy for yourself and others. This is Season 15, Episode 1, and today we're featuring first-person stories from graduate students who side hustle. The volunteers were asked this set of questions. What is your motivation for having a side hustle? What is your side hustle? What are its benefits and detriments? How much do you earn through your side hustle? If someone listening wants to pursue this side hustle, how would you recommend they get started? You'll hear from 8 volunteers in total throughout this episode, and perhaps be inspired to start or expand your own side hustle. By the way, there is still time to volunteer for one of the compilation episodes coming up later in the summer, specifically the episode on negotiating your individual grad student stipend and the episode on unions and unionization movements. If you have a story to share on either of those topics from the last few years, please email me at emily@pfforphds.com. I'm beyond excited to announce that I'm offering a brand new live 1-hour seminar titled How to Not Hate Your Fellowship During Tax Season. It's all about how to understand and properly handle your fellowship stipend that will not be reported on a Form W-2, which is what I call awarded income. Awarded income typically doesn't have income tax withheld from it, which can become an unwelcome surprise and even financial hardship if the recipient is not taught what to do starting with their first paycheck of this type. In addition to teaching about estimated tax and self-withholding, I give pointers for preparing for and navigating tax season with awarded income. This seminar is intended to be taken during orientation or shortly after by people who are switching on to awarded income for the first time, so it will be exclusively available between August and October of this year. If you are starting on awarded income in the fall and your university doesn't withhold income tax, or you've dealt with that scenario in the past, would you please recommend this seminar to your fellowship coordinator, program head, or graduate school? Please CC me, emily@pfforphds.com, so I can pick up the conversation. My goal is for every grad student receiving awarded income to be forewarned about this issue before it rears its ugly head during tax season. You can find the show notes for this episode at pfforphds.com/S15E1. Without further ado, here's our compilation episode on side hustling.
My name is Sean Kutagoa. I'm at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm getting my doctorate here. I have a master's and did my bachelor's at USC in Southern California, not South Carolina. I do materials research for semiconductor and energy topics. Yeah, my motivation for side hustling, I think like everyone else, is to make a little extra cash. But in addition to that, is trying to get some skills that I necessarily wouldn't get in the lab. I think for me as an engineer, I think soft skills are always going to be one of those things that engineers tend to either stereotypically or realistically lack. So I work for my campus's technology incubator, so that involves a lot of interviewing people, talking to like founders of companies. So that really helps develop a lot of soft skills, and then also gives me exposure to the business side of things. So it's a little kind of rounding out the skill set in addition to making some cash, which is always needed in grad school. So it's through the school. UT's I think one of a couple universities has like technology incubator associated with it. So if any graduate student or any like founder really has a good idea that they kind of want to commercialize, they'll take research and spin it out into the real world. So that the issue with that is a lot of people start applying to those positions, like, applying to the incubator to have their company incubated. And they need someone to kind of bridge that gap between the technical side of things, which is just, is this technology legitimate, versus the business side of things, which is, will this technology survive the competitive landscape? So this is something through UT that I applied for, because I have an interest in going into like technical due diligence in the venture capital industry upon graduation. So it kind of helped me build that skill set. But I got this through just relentlessly applying. I actually got rejected 4 times in a row, and I got it on my 5th try. So it's just an exercise in persistence or annoying someone. I don't really know, but either way, it worked out, and it's a really fulfilling position, I would say. And it's just like one of a couple of things that I do on the side to get some extra cash and skill set building as well. Yeah, I mean, drawbacks are always going to be like the time, right? Anytime, especially in grad school, anytime you do on a side hustle, is time taken away from research, especially if you ask some professors, thankfully not mine. And then, I mean, benefits will always just be like the people you meet. Networking is a huge part of grad school, I would say. It opens a lot of doors. As I would definitely say, one of the things people warn me about grad school is that it closes a lot of doors and you can't do anything else. I don't necessarily think that's true. It's opened a lot more doors than I had before, and it's a lot of people I just would not have met without applying to these side hustle positions. Like I get to talk to the leader, the technical director of the incubator directly on like a weekly basis. I talk to the president of the university every now and then. A lot of people in industry, academia. I get to help define industry roadmaps. I was invited to do like an article on semi-analysis. None of that would have been possible without a side hustle. So it's been very, very, very fulfilling. But yeah, the cons would just be the time commitment, really. So if you can make your own schedule in a side hustle, that's probably a huge benefit that I don't necessarily have. But those are the pros cons by the way. So maybe that's some other advice that I have. Just do something that you really enjoy. Don't take positions that you just are gonna be incredibly bored in, that you don't find any fulfillment in. This one actually only pays 15 an hour. I work for a startup too, one of the startups we have, and that one pays much better. It's like 40 an hour. So yeah, but again, one of those doors that's open that allowed me to go work at a startup, right? Every major city has a technology incubator. Los Angeles, where I went to undergrad, has Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, Austin Technology Incubator in Austin, obviously. Boston has a bunch. So like if you're in one of these major cities, they exist. Just go Google who the director is of your respective vertical if you're interested in energy, semiconductor, whatever. Google them, find their email. Surprisingly easy to stalk people online. Just email them, cold email them, and be like, "Hey, I'm a grad student." Especially if you're trying to do like technical due diligence, email them and be like, "Hey, I'm a grad student at this university, interested in technical due diligence." Because a lot of times those incubators are staffed with like business people who have a lot of business experience, but they don't really necessarily do technical due diligence, which is a very niche specific role that only PhDs can really fill. And then that's why you see in a lot of like hard tech investing firms like Kleiner Perkins, it's always staffed by PhDs on due diligence. It's just to avoid a Theranos like situation. And there's not that many people who can do that. So they'd probably be very willing to take your help. And don't be afraid to work for free for like a couple months, but then you can kind of push on it.
So I am a predoctoral student at University of Rochester. I'm a second year, and my motivation is really based on seeing how much my parents were able to save. Well, my parents are immigrants, and so I'd seen them working very hard all throughout my life, and not getting the most pay, but they were very much savers. They taught me how to save. I'm, thank goodness, not in debt from my undergraduate degree. And because of that, I know that I'm in a better situation than a lot of people that I know who do have a lot of student loan debt. And I want to prioritize both living semi-comfortably in my PhD on our relatively small stipend. But I also want to make sure that I'm setting myself up for financial freedom in the future so that I can, as lofty as it is nowadays, own a home one day, as well as save my retirement. And so those are like my biggest goals. I want to set myself up for a positive future financially. So my side hustle is working with my university's graduate housing department. Through them, I work as a community assistant. So I get to not only socialize with people that are also going to my graduate school, but I also get a very good deal on my rent. I get about half off for my rent, and it really does help considering how much rent has skyrocketed in the past couple years, like all across the country, especially in New York State. It's just gone up. It used to be that you could get a studio for under 800 across the board in this area, and now that is no longer the norm. You'd have to be outside of the city, and because I want to live as close to campus as possible, I decided to go for this position with graduate housing because I knew for me and my schedule, making my commute easy as possible was in my best interest. Coming from a major city, I knew commutes can be 45 minutes plus on public transit. I was not willing to do that for my PhD because I need to focus on my studies. So I decided to do this. It's very relatively easy. I'm doing one event per month and a meeting here or there, introducing people to the resources that the university has. So for the money I'm getting off of my rent, it's a very sweet gig. So the major benefit is the financial discount that I get on rent. I get half off for my rent charges. So that's the biggest benefit. I also get to socialize more and meet other people in my community. Moving to a new city, I did not know anyone here, so I was able to use this as a way to socialize with other people at my graduate school. I would say that if you do have the opportunity to be a graduate housing assistant, I would highly recommend it. If you're someone that likes planning events, then and interacting with people, I'd highly recommend it. It's not something that I find to be very tedious. Um, some places might give you entirely free housing. Some places might be like mine where you get like a 50% off for your housing rate. I find it to be beneficial because that's money that I get to keep for myself, that I can invest in my Roth IRA, that I can use for my own spending, that I can use for traveling, for leisure, because we know we get stressed as graduate students. So it's really important to like take breaks and have that extra money so that I can invest for my future and take those much needed breaks. Because I'm on a training grant, so I can't like have a job or an hourly wage. So this is my way of going around that. So I have to abide by the PhD rules, but also I need to live my life. Some of the drawbacks are just the logistics of hosting an event, having people turn out, thinking and brainstorming new ideas that are both interesting to busy PhD and master students, but also something that's attainable for me as another busy PhD student to to schedule and plan for. So those are like the biggest cons that I could think of. I really do enjoy like event planning. If I wasn't interested in STEM, I might have gone down this route because making sure that I check off all my boxes and doing things in a very organized manner is something I really enjoy doing. And yeah, those are the only drawbacks. I really enjoy this position and it's not very difficult for me. I'm a social person, so meeting people, introducing them to the grad housing area is not something I think of as a hardship. For this year, for 2022, 2023, I'm getting a rent reduction of $555 every month. I have a one-bedroom apartment, and the rent reduction is a flat rate for all graduate housing assistants. And so I think they calculate it based off of a two-bedroom apartment. But I have a one-bedroom and I get charged $944. So I'm paying less than $400 for my rent every month, which without roommates, no one that I know has that charge at all. And I only work about 10 hours per month in total, I'd say, in terms of planning, brainstorming and hosting the events. The events only last 1 to 2 hours, depending on how many people are there. And so I guess the hourly rate that I calculate based off of that is $55 per hour. So the first thing I would look into is if your university does offer graduate housing. Not every university does offer on-campus graduate housing. So looking into that first, and then once you do find out that that university does offer it, next thing I would do is look to see if they have any job openings. Usually those job openings will be posted sometimes throughout the semester, but primarily during the move in and move out periods at around like summer and winter time, depending on how your university works. If you're on the quarter system or on like a semester system, that could also be dependent on when they post those job openings. But because graduate students will graduate in December, there's often going to be opportunities for people to get these positions. And then once you do find out when they tend to post positions, email the contact person so they, one, know that you're aware, and two, that you're actually very interested in the position. It gives a bit more of an eagerness. Like when they're looking at your application, they'll recognize that, oh, this person emailed me several weeks ago saying that they were interested, and they schedule an informational interview with me to go over the requirements for the position. That'll sort of put you in their mind, which is something that I did to sort of better ensure that I got the position because I very much wanted it. And then going through the regular interview process. And if you do have any skills in terms of event planning or a previous housing related occupation or internship or what have you, that also will better you for being chosen for the position.
My name is Ariana. I'm a fifth year PhD candidate at the University of Virginia, and I live in Charlottesville, Virginia. So my motivation for side hustling is the obvious one, money. I was really in need of some supplemental income, especially as on my program, fifth year, the time of a lot of applications and preparing for a big move coming up. So it was that, and also trying to think about what I could be doing as a side hustle for the longer term. My side hustle is pet sitting, primarily dogs and cats, but I'm open to a range of other animals. So there are so many benefits, but also some considerations of pet sitting. First is that I love animals, and as a person who has a cat, not a dog, it's nice to be around dog energy and just get to meet very sweet animals around my community and honestly see places I haven't seen before. So I'm walking them around and all of that. It's also a pretty flexible gig. I mean, usually things settle around weekends and on breaks, but as a graduate student, especially in my later years, it's been nice to be like, okay, I'll go do a midday walk, something like that. It's also a job that, again, it's flexible in the nature that if I don't want to do it for a month, I could not do it. And that would be okay. I'm my own boss in that sense. And there are apps that help you find people and vet them and give you all the support you need. Drawbacks are definitely that, like I've been dissertating, and even with the flexibility of side hustling, it's been hard sometimes, and that can definitely become an unintentional or intentional avoidance strategy to be with pets. It's also time away from my apartment, my home, so a lot of the chores and things that need to get done often have to be delayed because I'm spending weekends with other people's pets, and I kind of miss my cat too. So those are some of the considerations. My earnings can really range depending on how committed I am to getting things done. I think it would be possible to get about 25, like if I was just doing walks, for example, 25 to $50 weekly, which only really adds up to 200 a month. But house sitting or pet sitting where I'm staying with them, that can look more like 500 or so dollars a month if I'm doing every single weekend. And that's another consideration. It's not the most I'm not flowing in money, rather, like it is a lot of time, but those like additional benefits, getting to walk outside, having to play with the pets, kind of adds to the compensation for me. So if you want to be a pet sitter, it's actually easier than I knew. So I was recommended by my cousin who's a vet technician, but there are apps like WAG and Rover, which have a really streamlined system for getting you involved. I mean, I'd recommend, of course, having some comfort with pets, but you can get reviews or sort of testimonials from family members and friends and other folks who you maybe pet sit for on the regular. I would say that's where I started. I was doing more just ad hoc pet sitting for other grad school friends and then really expanded into this. I would say too, just be thoughtful about what you're comfortable with. You don't have to stay at people's houses, but I feel pretty comfortable doing that because of all the safety measures that the apps have in place. And people are really, folks who want someone to care for their dog kind of want you to feel as comfortable as well. So I would say those are the quickest ways. So I'm sure you could advertise your services on a neighborhood group or something like that and get some direct referrals. Because I was going to say that's another drawback of the piece. So doing the apps, I would say is a great starting step because you get screened, you build up your reputation, but they can take about, if I charge $17 for a walk, I'll probably get 13 of those dollars. So I can't do the percentages really quickly. I'm not a math PhD, but it's notable. And so when you do that over time, like something like house sitting, it's not nothing. But what I've found, which I've appreciated, is after like one successful stay, a lot of folks are okay with going off the app and just paying me directly. And likewise, like I trust them, and I'm comfortable just reaching out. I have all the information that I need. So while I think it's an upfront cost, it doesn't have to be a continuous cost. It's just if you're trying to get a lot of clients. I wish I'd started earlier. With the side hustle, I mean, it's really hard when your schedule is more packed with classes and things. But I think it's the type of side hustle that really is relationship and community based and can be a good way to get integrated rather into a place that as a grad student, I know I was like in my room or studying in the building. So that was really nice. And I would say that it's actually kind of a nice little mini retreat. I can be in someone else's home or space with Wi-Fi, working on things, and that's been kind of nice too.
This submission is from H, a fifth-year humanities PhD candidate on the East Coast whose stipend is $40,000 per year. Quote, my motivation for side hustling is two-pronged. Part of it is to have the extra income. This allows me to save more. I've maxed out my Roth IRA every year since I got the job, and I get a 7% match into a 401k with a 3% safe harbor, so I effectively save 17% of my pre-tax side hustle income. This is great because my stipend income isn't eligible for a 401k and wasn't eligible for Roth IRA contributions for the first couple of years of my degree before they changed the rules to make stipend income eligible. The savings are reassuring for me because I hate the idea of graduating from my program in my early 30s seriously behind on retirement savings, especially as job prospects for humanities PhDs are pretty precarious and usually poorly paid. I find it psychologically reassuring to have savings for when I finish my program. But it's not just the savings. The extra income also allows me to have a nicer lifestyle than I would if I were living entirely off of the stipend. I don't feel like I'm missing out because of my income. I'm admittedly a person who likes certain luxuries like getting my nails done or having a wine subscription or going on vacation a few times a year that are out of step with the typical PhD lifestyle and needs more cash to fund. I like that I don't have to bow out of plans with my friends who have higher paid jobs just because I'm in grad school. I can go on trips, go to weddings, go to a nice dinner, etc. I know plenty of grad students who enjoy living simply and don't mind missing out on those things, but they're important to me. The second reason is job security. I'm very conscious of how few decent academic jobs are out there. I have witnessed very talented scholars totally flounder on the job market and then panic when they have to rapidly pivot into a new plan with little or no work experience and a lack of obviously marketable skills. Understandably, this leads to a lot of anxiety and depression. I find it petrifying. I don't want to be in that situation. I hang on to my job so that if I finish my PhD without anything else lined up, at least I have this. I like the job and would be fine to keep doing it while I figured out some other move post-degree. I think having the job gives me some security, both materially and existentially. Along with my main side job, I also have done other fixed-term gigs to develop a more diverse skill set. My goal is to make sure that I have recent work experience on my CV after I graduate, and talking points for informational interviews besides just my research. I don't want to be in the position I see many people in, where it's like they are graduating off a cliff and they have no idea what comes next or how to prepare. For my main side hustle, I work in private college consulting. My company provides advice to students applying to university programs, working with clients around the world with a special focus on U.S. colleges. My role involves mentoring students in their final year of high school as they work on their college essays. It's almost all remote, though we do team retreats once or twice a year. There are a lot of benefits. It involves two of the main areas I enjoy working in, education and writing. I love the colleagues I work with, and I love almost all of my students. It's a pleasure to get to know them, and I learn new things about the world from them. I feel like they grow as people throughout the process of us working together, even when they don't end up at their dream school. That makes it rewarding to me. It's a great counterpoint to my independent research work because it's people-focused and the impact feels immediate, unlike an abstract and long-term dissertation project. When I'm deep down a research rabbit hole on my own in the library, getting on a Zoom to talk to a colleague or student is a breath of fresh air. Sometimes I feel that having a second job makes grad students more efficient. Anecdotally, I find that up to a point, the ones who have less time seem to manage it better. The drawback is that it's highly seasonal work, and I'm often having to be on email for several hours a day, September through December. It's tough when it overlaps with the holidays and the fall semester crunch time. This was especially true in my second and third years, when I was grading finals and writing my own papers and attending conferences simultaneously alongside my job. The nature of the work means that I just have to respond if students are down to the wire on their deadlines, and my academic work has suffered in those moments, but not badly enough that my advisors said anything. I'm still on track to complete the degree in time and have been successful in my program. It's a bit easier now that I'm ABD and more in charge of my own schedule. I have the freedom to organize my time around the busy season. The benefits to me are money and setting myself up for future careers outside academia. The drawback is the stress and risk of burnout that can come with being overcommitted, and the risk that spreading yourself too thin means not doing as good a job as you could have on your main gig. Personally, I'm okay with that. My approach works for me and my priorities, but plenty of grad students I know would hate it. I earn $45,000 annually on salary for the college consulting gig, for which I am technically part-time. This is after several raise negotiations. I've been at the company 6 years now and started on $30K. I get a Christmas bonus of $1,000. They also paid for my laptop. In the busiest season, September to December, I work 20 hours a week, and in low season, it can be 4 to 10 hours a week. To get started in college consulting, I cold emailed a bunch of companies and ended up going with this one, but had offers from others. I've heard of someone getting into the same type of role after being reached out to on LinkedIn. My university listserv sometimes sends out listings for similar roles. I would recommend trying to connect personally with people rather than applying into a black hole, but then applying to a few places. I imagine that experience working with students as a TA or in a writing center would be really helpful, but if you have no relevant experience, try doing it on a volunteer basis first. I know of people getting these jobs after doing pro bono work. Finally, it's a fundamentally credentialist industry, so if you have a degree or 2 or 3 from a very competitive school, that will help. End quote. Emily here for a brief interlude. Would you like to learn directly from me on a personal finance topic such as taxes, goal setting, investing, frugality, increasing income, or student loans, each tailored specifically for graduate students and postdocs? I offer seminars and workshops on these topics and more in a variety of formats, and I'm now booking for the 2023-2024 academic year. If you'd like to bring my content to your institution, would you please recommend me as a speaker or facilitator to your university, graduate school, graduate student association, or postdoc office? My seminars are usually slated as professional development or personal wellness. Ask the potential host to go to pfforphds.com/speaking or simply email me at emily@pfforphds.com to start the process. I really appreciate these recommendations, which are the best way for me to start a conversation with a potential host. The paid work I do with universities and institutions enables me to keep producing this podcast and all my other free resources. Thank you in advance if you decide to issue a recommendation. Now back to our interview.
My name is Courtney, and I am a third-year PhD student in civil engineering at Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon. My side hustle is renting out rooms in my house. I do this to supplement my research assistant income and pay my mortgage. It's a steady, dependable form of income and helps reducing my housing costs dramatically. Besides the occasional banking and paperwork, it is a very passive source of income. Taking care of a house is hard work, but when you have tenants, things have to be done in a timely and high quality manner with their living conditions in mind. For example, we recently replaced the roof and had to include them in the discussions of what the condition of the house would be during the construction. Since I co-own the house, I also split the rental income, so I make $650 a month. And I already pay quarterly estimated taxes for my fellowship anyway, so I calculate this income into that as well. But I also use tax deductions for housing costs by following Form 1040 Schedule E, which actually lays it out really nicely. This side hustle requires the purchase of a property, which is quite an undertaking. It requires some dedication to understanding rental laws in your state and city. But after that initial setup, having yearly tenants who stick around makes the side hustle low energy input for high rewards. I started this 2 years ago, and I plan to continue this side hustle until I graduate in a few years. At this point, I probably spend about 3 hours a month on managing tenants and their needs. If it feels impossible to buy a house, look into co-borrowing or first-time home buyer financial help in your state or county. And check out Emily's other podcasts on grad students buying houses.
This next submission is from an anonymous grad student who is about to start intern year and lives in Texas.
What is my motivation for having a side hustle? I would just say, as a graduate student, I just needed money. And while I was grateful for the stipend that I received from grad school, it just wasn't enough to be able to travel, to visit family, just to have a little extra cushion. And then now that I'm moving out of state for internship, without my side hustle, I would not have been able to afford my move at all. I am a research assistant at a hospital. Some of the drawbacks of this position, I would just say, is for the spring semester, balancing my schedule. There was a lot to do when it came to doing my internship interviews, wrapping up my final semester in the state that I live in, and just trying to balance my schedule, I would say, is one of the drawbacks. Benefits to that are just having money, having a cushion. As I mentioned before, I am moving. I'm single, so I'm moving from the state that I live in to another state, and I feel very fortunate that I'm not worried about affording my move. I am not worried about like the cost of a U-Haul or having to like borrow money from relatives or like take out a personal loan. I am solely like financing my move from the income I receive from my side job. I would say in terms of how this position will uh, impact or play a role in my future career. I'm the type of hospital that I work at is um, type of setting I would like to work in the future, and this population as well. Also, I can probably request letters of recommendation from my bosses. And I think just it gives me a lot of insight into the type of field that I'll be working in the future. So I've been at this job since I guess like orientation was in December, and I make about 25, yeah, I make 25.83 an hour, and I work 20 hours a week. And so I would say before taxes, I take home about 2,000 a month. If someone's looking to pursue this type of position or just a side hustle, Indeed is a great uh, source when it comes to looking for research assistant jobs that are flexible, that are part-time. I also recommend, especially if you're interested in like research or just want to gain some clinical, reaching out to PIs at different hospitals that might, they don't always broadcast like that they're hiring. And so reaching out to them and to inquire like, hey, I'm so and so, I'm looking for a job. Or I'm interested in any position you might have available, and if they are, even better. That's kind of how it worked out for me, where someone put an email out there, we're looking for research assistant. Do you know of anyone? And I responded back and said, I know me, and I'm looking for a job. And I got in a week or two. I would say finding that balance in your schedule is really important. I and also having some flexibility. So during the semester, I was working like in the middle of the week, and now that the semester has ended, I requested a shift in the schedule so I could work the first like Monday through Wednesday, which is helpful for me, so that I can get other things done um, at towards the end of the week. But also, I think just there was some delay. I work for the government, and so there's some delay when it came to my application being processed, and not on my end, but just the government's end. And I very much communicated with my prospective supervisor and let them know, like, hey, I filled out all the paperwork. I'm just waiting to hear back. It took 6 months to actually get hired. Even well, to like start the orientation, like the onboarding process, even though I was hired back in like the summer of 2022. But I think for me, patience was a virtue, and really just showing up and being present at work. Uh, I'm confident that in the near future, when I'm applying for postdoc positions, if I request a letter of recommendation from any of my supervisors here, they would happily write it. Now that I am no longer contracted at my university as a grad student, the month of June, which is my last month that I'll be working here, I'm just working here. And I am so fortunate. Like I don't even know how to express it like enough. I have peers that are either married or they're receiving like, or they have a partner or they're receiving support from their family. And like I don't necessarily have like financially, like I take care of myself so far. And I know for a fact that I would not be able to move 1,500 miles from where I am now had it not been for this job. Because the money I received as a grad student through my stipend was great. It covered all of my bills and like maybe an extra $100 or two. But over the course of 6 months, it would not have been enough to like pay for U-Hauls, to pay for moving boxes. And also too, in my case, oftentimes when you apply for housing, they want someone who on paper earns 3 times the rent. And so if I did not have this job, I would have likely had to reach out to a relative to co-sign my lease, which is fine, but it's just a hassle having to like ask someone to do that again and again, especially if they've been like so, especially if they've done it, for me throughout grad school. It's nice to kind of feel a little more independent.
This submission is from Drayvon Dobson. Quote, I've recently graduated with a PhD in pathology from UNC Chapel Hill, studying the genetic regulation of blood coagulation factors. I'm about to start a postdoc position soon in environmental toxicology, studying the effects of ozone exposure on health and disease outcomes. Having a side hustle has been a great way to give my mind a break from my lab work, as well as supplement my income as a graduate student, which was livable but not great. My side hustle is performing as a professional musician. I minored in jazz studies on the saxophone in undergrad, and I've kept my passion for music alive as a side hustle. I play at churches, country clubs, weddings, etc. with a few different bands, usually on the weekends. The benefits of this are that it provides a constructive and profitable outlet for my passion, and it's fun. The detriments are that there's a considerable amount of preparation involved in order to play the gigs well, practicing, learning music, purchasing and maintaining equipment, etc. Also, the gigs can consume a good amount of my weekend depending on how far and how long they are, detracting from my ability to rest for the upcoming work week. But you can also say yes or no to opportunities to fill your needs and schedule. I have worked my way up to earning about $20,000 a year from my side hustle. This is definitely on the higher end for a part-time musician, and I had to work my way up to that over the years. This is generated by about 2 to 3 gigs a weekend, averaging out at around $200 a gig. Pursuing this side hustle is totally obtainable if you are musically inclined. You can start by visiting local jam sessions in your area to figure out who might be in need of your musical talents. There are also online avenues to pursue in local Facebook groups and ads and websites like Reverb Nation. Beyond music, if you have a passion for the arts, there's most likely a way to monetize it. You can sell art, join a dance troupe, audition for a theater production, etc. I have found artistic passions and scientific studies to be a great combination of financial gain and life balance. I would encourage anyone who is interested to give it a shot. You never know.
My name is Dan Gorman. I am finishing my PhD in U.S. history this summer at the University of Rochester, and I also live in Rochester, New York. My motivation for side hustling is solvency. While we had pretty good PhD stipends at my university, it's still, you're living in sort of comfortable poverty as a PhD student, I find. And for some people, it's less comfortable. I say comfortable in my case because I don't have any dependents. It's just me and my household. But there's always wanting to have more than just a little bit of extra money in the bank account, wanting to have something of a cushion. Especially as we got towards COVID, I was glad I'd done some side hustling and saved up some extra money. Sometimes when I say solvency, I mean, yes, paying the bills. Also, it's good once in a while to actually do something fun with your assets. But also, I think mainly my main reason for wanting to save up money was in case of an emergency. If somebody got sick and I needed to go visit them, or during COVID when we just didn't know what else was going to happen next. My side hustle isn't really one thing. What I recommend to other people is sign up for as many internal newsletters at your university as possible and actually read them. I found a number of paying side opportunities within the university just by being on the newsletter feeds for different offices. For example, so the Office of Undergraduate Research, a couple of years ago, they were sending a delegation of students to the National Conference on Undergraduate Research, and an opportunity came up that they would want to send a couple staff or grad students as chaperones. It was a pretty easy job. I had to go to Oklahoma City for 4 days, but they covered all my expenses and there was a small honorarium. It wasn't a ton of extra money, but it was there, and it was an experience that I could say, hey, this counts as teaching and advising and mentorship. Another example is that I had joined a professional group for graduate students through our music conservatory, but they'd opened it up to graduate students in other divisions. It was called Working PhDs. So they were doing professional readings and interviewing people about how they transitioned into alternative academic jobs. And as part of that, they launched a podcast called Working PhDs. And so by recording interviews for that, I was paid, I think, $75 per episode. And I did 3 episodes, so then it was over $200 extra. So I'm not talking about huge amounts of money here, but finding bite-sized projects like these internally, if you do enough of them, they do start to add up to some extra cash. And again, $200 may not sound like a lot, but that could cover, depending where you live, that could be internet, your insurance bill, and something else for the month. So it's not nothing. Looking beyond the university, I think sometimes it comes down to professional networks and signing up. So again, I don't have a very original method, but it's signing up for the listservs for your professional organizations. An opportunity came up a couple of years ago, actually during the pandemic, during that first pandemic year, where some friends of mine were working on a digital library project at Northern Illinois University, which is, 800 miles away from me. But they said they needed people to write sort of lesson plans for their website. It was pairing archival old books that were scanned with how you could teach it in the classroom. And then we would present it digitally. And that came with a $600 honorarium. And again, I don't have a magic method for finding more of these, except, in my case, in my field, in the humanities, get on HNet, Humanities.net, sign up for the main feeds, which post every day 10 to 20 calls for papers, podcasters. Sometimes you'll see independent editing projects. And, it can be a little tedious because then, you're deliberately spamming your inbox, both from internal sources and then from external professional organizations. But there are opportunities out there. It's not a lot of money. Again, these are small, usually project-based. the $600 for the lesson plan that's at the high end of what I've gotten. But smaller bite-sized projects that you can fit in without massively impeding your own studies, or if you have a more prominent work study job that you're doing 10 to 20 hours a week. I think writing that lesson plan and presenting it, I think it took maybe 6 hours total over the course of a couple of weeks, because the book was a dime novel. It was quite thin. So your mileage may vary. Other challenges, I think also, again, that oftentimes these bite-sized academic projects, whether they're at your school or somewhere else, they tend not to pay a lot. We're talking $100 to $200 usually. But the flip side is that if it's a bite-sized project like that, you can do it quickly, and it doesn't really impede on your main work responsibilities at your university. And that was the big thing for me. So wanting to find ways I could use my skill set, make some extra money, but also where it wouldn't become such a massive time sink that people at the university, my supervisors, would be saying, hey, you're not focused on your main work. Ultimately, I would say that the kinds of projects I've described are not ways to make a lot of money, although there are exceptions. Like if you become a writing tutor, you will make a good hourly rate doing that. However, they can give you unique experiences and give you some more, in business parlance, transferable skills and deliverable outcomes that you can say you have produced when you're going on the job market.
Listeners, thank you for joining me for this episode. I have a gift for you. You know that final question I ask of all my guests regarding their best financial advice? I have collected short summaries of all the answers ever given on the podcast into a document that is updated with each new episode release. You can gain access to it by registering for my mailing list at pfforphds.com/advice. Would you like to access transcripts or videos of each episode? I link the show notes for each episode from pfforphds.com/podcast. See you in the next episode, and remember, you don't have to have a PhD to succeed with personal finance, but it helps. The music is Stages of Awakening by Poddington Bear from the Free Music Archive and is shared under CC by NC. Podcast editing by Dr. Lourdes Bobbio and show notes creation by Dr. Jill Hoffman.